From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by Dux IT.
Hi, I'm Mario. I'm a custom delivery architect for Kubernetes. I'm also technical advisory group chair for operational resilience in the CNCF, and I'm a co-chair for SIG ContribX in Kubernetes itself. What do I do except ruining days? I have stupid ideas, and the good thing is I write that I have stupid ideas. So last year was the 10th anniversary of Kubernetes, as you might have heard, and there's a feature in Twitter or X where you have those small balloons when your birthday is. So I suggested that we add the birth date of Kubernetes as the birth date in X. The problem is that X or Twitter is for the age of 13. So this happened. I banned the Kubernetes.io Twitter account with 300,000 followers, and it took us some time to get this back. So that's what I do, annoy people and have stupid ideas. So why are we here? Who of you have heard about the Cyber Resilience Act? That's a lot of people, I must admit. The last time I asked this question in the summer, there was only a handful who raised their hand. So, Cyber Resilience Act is a law of the European Union. It's now in place, so it's already there since last year, December, and it's a law that was introduced in a way that was never in this size. So we never had a law that is so big and affects so much stuff in the area of cybersecurity. It applies to nearly all hardware, and with hardware I mean your coffee maker, I mean your toast maker, I mean everything. I heard from one customer of us, it affects the brakes of their trailers that they are building. So basically it is a regulatory with a broad scope, and it is a shift in responsibility who needs to be the reliable for what parts of the software. And the goal is safeguard consumers and businesses to make those boundaries. There's a timeline. As you can see, it already started, so implementation into force entering was 10th of December 2024. The enforcement of infrastructure will be next year in June, and the main topic that is interesting for everyone is the 11th of September, so 1 year from now, where you need to report to the European Union exploits, vulnerabilities within 24 hours. There's one small little problem with this. The platform where you have to report this, the creation from the European Union that they look for a vendor was finished 2 months ago. So the platform does not exist yet. Let's see if the platform will exist next year in September. The good thing is it needs to provide an API. So at least we have an API-first strategy when we need to report those vulnerabilities. The full enforcement of the law will be in December 2027, and there's a transitioning thing that goes until 2028. So you have 11 months and 30 days to implement all of the stuff that you're now liable for. No pressure there. Why? That's the biggest question. Why do we have why this rule was created? So when we have a look at cybercrime and how much money companies need to spend, or how much money is lost through cybercrime for things that happen, with example, with Log4j or Log4Shell and any problems. It's ever and ever more growing. So we had small sums in the beginning, but now it's growing exponentially. I had a talk last year where we named the value of open source. This was calculated by a university, and they estimate the value of open source to be 8.8 trillion US dollars. So basically, the value of open source is less than we lose with cybercrime already in this year, which is projected for this year. Because this year, the amount of cybercrime or the amount of money that are being lost by cybercrime is $10.5 trillion. And this will grow in the future. So we needed a way to secure software to combat also this cybercrime spikes that we are getting there. So there's a new idea that we have security by design and default. That's basically the idea that it should be enforced into the European Union. And you can basically also find all of the information on the website of the BSI. So you can go to bsi.bund.de and find all of the information there. The good thing is you also can find it in English. And the idea is that we have a change that anything needs to be security by design. So it is not something that you just say like, okay, we build something and then we think about the security. No, you start with security is always there from the beginning, and it's always affecting every step in your product development. And it is always a must. So security is a default that comes from the beginning. For example, there's a rule that default passwords are no longer admin. Because apparently the main access into networks in the past have been printers, because no one changes the default password of a printer. And there were a lot of data leaks, for example, and I don't know the GEMA equivalent in Austria. They got their whole database hacked because they didn't change the default password of their printer. So what we have is now, we now need product security. And the CRA outlines basically that your product must have no known exploitable vulnerability. It must protect all data, personal or other, with a state-of-the-art mechanism like encryption. You need to have an implemented access control with a robust authentication identification to provide any unauthorized access. It must be, every product must have a prevent mechanism against DDoS. And you need to limit the attack surface that people can have. So you need also to limit the entry point for attackers. So I live on a farm and I have like my own wastewater processor unit there. And my wastewater processor unit, for whatever reason, has a Wi-Fi that it creates so that I can get the statistics out of it for whatever reason. And the system, they boost the system so far that I can basically access this Wi-Fi 100 meters away, which is utterly stupid because I will never go 100 meters away to get the statistics of my waste disposal unit. So this is basically also like limiting radius and stuff like this. And you also require you to have vulnerability handling. So basically there's this, you need to have an established and documented process to identify and handle vulnerabilities, and not only vulnerabilities for you, but also for the software that you use inside of your products. And you need to provide updates in a timely way to fix flaws once they are discovered. You need to have, and that's also important, free security updates for the lifetime of every product that you have. So as long as the product is active in the market, you need to have free security updates, and you must disclose everything publicly and make it publicly available. So everyone is now wondering, like, am I affected by this? No, why should I be affected by this? I mean, I produce software, I produce a coffee maker. No, but you said every hardware is affected. So yeah, maybe you are affected. And the problem is that most of the companies are not ready for this because there are clear rules set out and many organizations, they don't know what to do. They don't have an overview about this. The Linux Foundation created a survey in the beginning of the year, and 62% of all of the companies are not familiar or only slightly familiar with the regulations of the Cyber Resilience Act. So there are some scary numbers. So as we said, 62% have no familiarity. 51% are uncertain about the slide that I showed you before with the deadlines when comes what into effect. 59% don't know the penalties that will come to your company, and 42% don't even know if they are even affected by this. So I can help you. Are you affected? Do you sell a product with a digital component inside of the European Union? If you say yes, then you're affected. Because any product that has some kind of software on it is part and is affected by the CRA. It's a global market, which means that even if your company is not inside of the EU, if you sell a product in the European market, you must comply with this rule. And the funny thing is, if you're doing drop shipping, so you're buying a product in China, drop shipping it to Europe, and then selling it, then you are liable because it affects manufacturers, importers, and distributors. So everyone in the whole chain is affected by this and can be sued. And yes, maybe you won't get the Chinese manufacturer or the foreign manufacturer. However, then you are liable. So basically, you need to secure your supply chain. There are some exclusions. So if you're building cars, then you're lucky, you're not affected. But there are other laws that are way more strict that affect you then. Same goes for medical devices and aviation. And basically, any hardware or software that can connect directly or indirectly to a network, and that's what I mean. My waste thing has a Wi-Fi, which is a network. So it's also basically affected. And for whatever reason, my oven also can access Wi-Fi. I don't know why, but it can. So my oven, or the manufacturer of my oven is also affected. Of course, this only works when there are penalties about it. The penalties are high. So it's either up to 50 million euros or 2.5% of your company's worldwide annual turnover. The higher is the fee that you need to pay. And maybe the more severe thing is you can be banned from the European market forever. So your company can be excluded from the whole European market. And I think that's also a reason. So no more sales in Europe eliminates a large portion maybe of your market. Who is liable? So who is affected by this? Open source software is part of every software that we have in the world. Every one of you is using open source in their product. Why? If you're running on Linux, congratulations, you're using an open source project. You have components running in Kubernetes, you're using an open source project. Oh, your project is written in Go or in PHP, congratulations, you're using open source software. So basically, you as a company are now responsible to perform due diligence on open source projects. You are the primary responsibility for product compliance, you need to do conformity assessments, and you are liable, as I mentioned, for the whole product life cycle. What changed is the path around, because in the past, people came to open source project and said, there's an issue, fix this issue, because you are doing open source. And now this shifted. The liability is moving towards companies. The stewards of those open source projects, for example, a steward for open source is CNCF, because they are the foundation who's owning the product. They have a lighter part that they need to fulfill. So they can do voluntary vulnerability reporting. They can cooperate with market surveillance authorities, and they are basically only they only need to create cybersecurity policies. The individual developer who is working on open source have no obligations whatsoever. And that's why CRA is actually a good thing, because it shifts away the responsibility from the people who are building the software in their free time and in their spare time to the people who are making money with those software. So that's why CRA in its baseline is good for the whole world, and it forces companies to go into upstream and provide support for upstream. The problem is, as we said, most of the companies use open source software, and a lot of companies make money with open source software, but never contribute back. They are just passively consumption. And they rely on upstream, they rely on fixes, and they are just waiting until something happens. There was a CVE, I think last week again, which had a huge impact in the whole community, and people were just waiting to it being fixed. So basically, this now also forces companies to, if they fix something, they need to provide the fix upstream. So there's a movement to move stuff into the projects back, and it basically is a shift of responsibility that companies do more open source. And there's one important thing, and I know I have this slide in every talk that I do. Open source maintainers owe you nothing. They do this in their spare time, they do this in their free time. Yes, some of them are paid by companies to do open source work, but they still do it at horrible working hours because the open source community is international. But there's still this idea that people basically have, you wrote the software, you need to maintain it. And there's a cool tweet. I just give you a second to read the tweet, and then basically tell me what would you do? And this is the expectation that some companies have. And it's like, what the heck? Are you kidding me? If you want support, pay for support, because open source software does not mean free software. However, the open source world is not evil, so we have some tools to help you with open source compliance and to also solve those problems that you now have with CRA and to fix those stuff. So basically, the same ecosystem that provides you the software also provides you with an ecosystem of tools to solve those problems for your company and to help you build a supply chain. So there's now the great inversion. The old way for open source was we pressure maintainers to fix bugs, and the new way is the companies need to fix bugs. So there's now a switch of relationship, and this is a chance for the whole developer community to basically move to a way of we can now have a visible business outcome for companies to invest into open source or to give maintainers into open source projects. So, what do we need? We need an SBOM. We need to create SBOMs for our software. We need to create SBOMs for projects. Software bill of materials, it's basically what software do I use, what components are they, which license do they use, and so whatsoever, which parts of it are CVE affected. And there's basically a detailed way for creating those things. There's a readable format, which is SPDX or CycloneDX, where you can automatically create those things. How do you create those things? There are a couple of tools to do this. So you have, for example, Sift, which is an open source tool that takes the repository and creates a SBOM list out of the repository. There's a specific CycloneDX generator. There's Turn that basically creates your SBOMs out of your images that you run anywhere. And there's an SBOM tool from Microsoft that integrates in the automation pipeline. So you have a huge tool set that you can leverage for generating those SBOMs and vulnerabilities. After this, we need vulnerability scanning. So an SBOM tells you what problems do I, or what software do I use, but it doesn't tell you what is insecure or what is affected by a CVE. So we basically need vulnerability scanning software. And there's a way of automated scanning those vulnerabilities in your development lifecycle. So when you're actively developing software, you can basically put this into your project and just have it as part of your development cycle. There's also a toolkit for this. So when we go on the software composition analyst side, we have Gripe, that basically finds known CVEs for your software. You have the dependency checker that is for some languages that enters them. There's also, for the static application security testing, something that you can just run while you're coding, and also for the dynamic application testing when it's basically already deployed to create those security scannings and create reports. Funny thing is, I was not on this stage, it was the other stage in the other room. I gave a talk about cloud-native security. And there was this one slide that told you DevSecOps you need to implement in your company so that security is always part of it. And so you basically have in your whole life cycle of development, you have the SAST, the DAST, the penetration tests as part of your complete development cycle. And I don't want to tell you, I told you so last year, but I told you so last year. Therefore, as mentioned now, DevSecOps is basically now the path to go forward. So DevSecOps is where we need to go, where we need what we need to implement. And the good thing is there are tools that we can use. For example, I'm currently building for the CNCF a central place to look up SBOMs and to have SBOMs for every project which is in the CNCF. It still takes some time because there are 210 projects in the CNCF, and the problem is that you need to do it for every of the project's releases and all of the subcomponents to generate those SBOMs. So we are, I think, currently looking at 900 repositories that we are scanning and generating, and we need to do this for every release. It is upstream supported and so on. So it takes some time. And it also takes some development time. And then we basically scan those for vulnerabilities. And then we have basically the vulnerability exploit exchange to attest if a vulnerability in a specific package is actually affecting the software. Because not all vulnerabilities or not all CVEs are relevant for your software. Because if there's a CVE in the software for the build pipeline, but it's not going into the software that you're deploying on the machine, it is not affecting you, right? It's something that needs to be fixed, but it won't open a security hole inside of the software if it's just the tooling that you're using. So this is always something that you need to keep in mind. And I have a bonus project that I want to share with you, which is GWAC. GWAC is a project in the OpenSSF, and it's a graph for understanding your SBOM, because as we mentioned now, we have a machine-readable format for SBOMs, and this machine-readable format is nice, but I don't know you, but I'm more of the visual person that wants to see when something is affected, and it basically takes your SBOM and generates a graph out of it that you can see, okay, I use this package in this version which is affected by this CVE. Okay, then I click on this package. Where do I use it? Do I use it in every part of my software, or do I just use it in one part of my software? So basically, I can check. There's a CVE. Am I affected by this? Or I can also use it to see, like, okay, I use this one package in all of my software. What is the OpenSSF scorecard for those projects, for this open source project? Is it a secure project? Is there developers, or is the developer graph like in LFX Insights? I can see like how good is the project maintained, how regular are those releases. Can I rely on this? And you can then also find gaps in open source projects to say like, hey, this is a project where our company potentially could support the development because we are heavily relying on this project. So it gives you also insights. And it also helps you with compliance, because you can also figure out maybe one of the projects is using a license that is not allowed in our company or is violating our own company licenses. And this also gives you some insights that you can just do with a background and basically visualization. So, TLDR, CRA is a lot of work. CRA is hard. You need to do stuff. However, the open source community can help you. The open source community has already tools. The stewards of those open source software are going beyond what they need to do, because they don't need to provide you with SBOMs for each of the projects, but they still do it. And they are basically helping you that you are not alone in this whole endeavor. There are some tools in the open source community that you can also look at, like there's the OpenSSF security baseline. It's a checklist that you can also apply to your own projects. We have the OpenSSF scorecard that tells you how good are projects. There are case studies, and there's practical world advices that you can find in OpenSSF. So there's a huge tool set and a lot of information to help you with this. There's even in the CNCF, there's a free course that anyone can take for free to help you understand CRA. So, what can you do? Get involved. Help open source projects, get involved in open source. As mentioned, there's enroll your entire team in the free course to understand this. So it's Linux Foundation, not CNCF. And there's also the OpenSSF where you can get involved. There's from CNCF side, there's, for example, contributor.dev, where you can see all of good first issues for all of the open source projects. Silent advertisement for my tag, it's operational resilience. We do a lot of day 2 operations. We are defining currently a path for how to do release processes for CNCF projects, but it's also something where you could get involved and also get some insights from there. And what you also can do is you can hire open source maintainers. So you can pay people to work in open source because your company is benefiting from this, and it's gitjobs.dev. It's also from Linux Foundation. TLDR, if you need to go to your executive level, just send them this slide. Basically, classify your products, find out what you use, find out what your portfolio is, find out what is the scope, what are the risks. Create a task force, so your development team cannot handle CRA. You need your legal team involved, you need your IT you need your product team involved, you need your procurement involved, because this affects the whole company and it's not a, give it to IT problem. Find gaps in your environment. Develop a roadmap. You still have 12 months from today until you need to first report things, given that we have the endpoint available, and engage with the community. And hire open source contributors or create an open source strategy for your company. It's a good thing. It's a chance to get involved. It will move the whole open source movement forward. It will help foster the position of Europe for open source. And it's a chance, not a bad thing. I think the benefit that we can gain out of this is way bigger than the downsides that we have. Thank you. I wish you a safe trip home, enjoy lunch, and see you at ContainerDays next year. Bye.
First one is not a question, it's a great statement. Yeah, I think your last slides answered this already. Thank you for that. Are internal products affected? What about web services like customer portals or applications?
If you just run it internally and your own company is your own consumer, no, because you don't sell it. It's only sold products when it comes to B2C or B2B. So you're lucky.
Nice. The next question is very similar. Does the CRA also affect pure software products?
It has a digital component and it is potentially running with some network connections, so yes.
You're not lucky.
What effect does CRA have on open source software? As we mentioned, we now try to create like this release process so that we say that it is great if SBOMs for projects are already included inside of in each of the releases, so that the companies can just consume it. Yeah, that's.
Thank you. It's basically impossible to have software without any low or minimum CVEs. What about false positives? How strict is the known vulnerabilities requirement?
That's to be seen, right? I mean, the law is getting into effect. We will see. I mean, first of all, you just report vulnerabilities up to the European Union. There will be false positives, of course. The known vulnerability is also like, is there a fix? Can it be fixed? And this is also like how is it affecting me? Is it not affecting me? That's what I did with the OpenWex. It tells you basically, is this affecting us or not?
Thank you. At this point, I actually would end the session. I think you have many questions. What is affected? What is not affected? I think it's very individual. Maybe you can come downstairs and talk to Mario himself. And I just want to thank you for being here. And as Mario already said, see you next year. Thank you.
From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by Dux IT.